Hello. Today I'll be interviewing Carolyn Schulte. She fits the qualifications because she's female and she is of Caucasian descent. A much different background than myself. Share a little bit about yourself.
My name is Carolyn. I'm 33. I am from Michigan, never left. Mainly from Grand Rapids, but have been in Lansing for the majority of my life. I'm a zookeeper who went to Michigan State, and I love being outside, love animals, I love food.
What is your favorite memory of your family?
I would say Christmases, and I know that's not one memory, but I remember having a distinct fear right after college that everyone was going their own separate ways, and what I was going to miss most was that we wouldn't be all in the same city for Christmas. So not like one specific memory, but I think like Christmases in general were always good. Like Christmas Eve, you hang out, we watch movies, eat all the baked goods my mom had made, and then Christmas morning, wake up, read the Bible story, do stockings, do presents, have coffee cake. Like there was a ritual to it, and that kind of fell apart once we all got older, but I think that's still my favorite. I think some of the things I was like very ingrained with have to do a lot with like Christianity, so like being loving to people. I think also like on the, not necessarily the flip side, but like my parents were really good at managing money, and that was ingrained in me really young. I think of my siblings, I'm the best at it, just because I got to watch all of them do their thing. So like being responsible with your resources, like whatever those are, like money, your time, your talent, your just like things that you own, the people you have, like that's a resource that I find like I really value. So like taking care of relationships, so yeah, just like stewarding your things. Yeah, those are like my two big ones. I went to Michigan State for college. Before that, high school, I was in Grand Rapids at a high school called Forest Hill Central. Kind of obscure. It was a pretty affluent high school, I would say. Are you going to ask me a question about high school demographics?
Yes, I was going to ask you, what was the diversity like there?
It was pretty minimal. So Forest Hills is in a town called Ada or Cascade. They're kind of like neighboring towns, and it's predominantly white. I would say the diversity that I did have in my graduating class, it was like probably less than like 15% of the class makeup was not white, and mainly people of like Indian descent, like the country of India, or like Southeast Asian. I did not have anyone who was black in my graduating class. I didn't have anyone Latino in my graduating class that I can remember. So,
and was that noticeable for you?
it's kind of like asking a fish if they know they're in water. Like I didn't really ever think about it. I didn't think to myself like this is weird, or like that other schools would be different. Like I didn't think a whole lot about what are other high schoolers in other high schools experiencing that's different than me. It was just kind of like, yeah, we did have like a really good football star. I think he was our quarterback, and he was like a couple of years older than me. And I know that like he stood out to me, but it was mainly because he was like the star of the football team. Like I definitely knew he was black because like he was black, but it never resonated with me that he was the one black guy that I noticed in my whole school, you know? So. I spent a lot of time watching Animal Planet when I was a kid. Steve Irwin was my hero from the time I was probably 8 years old until he passed away in like 2003 or whenever that was. I would like watch his shows. I had dreams of like, I'm gonna get to Australia, I'm gonna meet this guy, I'm gonna work at his zoo, all that stuff. And he kind of like kept my passion for animals going and like gave it a good outlet because he was educating people on animals, so people were like getting excited about animals, and my dad loved it, so we would watch together. That was like very foundational for me kind of like seeing that animal passion could like go somewhere. Like it's not just a silly thing. It's not just like I have stuffed animals and that's my outlet. It's like, oh, you can really do things with animals. So Steve Irwin, childhood hero, love that man. Um, can't hear that without thinking about like the Black Lives Matter movement, Trayvon Martin, like George Floyd, like things that like really pivotal moments. Like as a white person, I hear racism in America, and like there's part of me that wants to be like, oh God, this is like all my fault. Like I understand my race's role in this, and then there's also the side that's like just really sad about what I feel like hasn't changed, right? So like there have been really big pivotal moments from like 2014 on where it's like this is the moment something's gonna happen and change, and like then nothing really does, and it keeps happening. And so like I can only imagine like being a person of color and seeing that and continuing to just feel kind of like, when is this ever gonna stop? But yeah, I think that it's not dead and gone. It's probably I don't know if it's worse or if I'm just more aware. It's hard to like measure that. I wasn't like paying attention in a high school full of white people. Like I wasn't aware of like racism, right? And then like in college, even my circle was mainly like Caucasian for the first year or so. And then like I met a bunch of really cool people from like different places my sophomore year and like started to actually have cool conversations. But that was like at age 20. So for like 20 years, I wasn't really aware of it. But yeah, definitely not something that's dead and gone.
Do you think racism in America is less prominent than it ever has been?
No. I think it was, so like you have this whole movement in the 50s and 60s to like kind of fight for equality on like a governmental level. So like segregation was condoned by the government until that time, and then there was a push to make it illegal to discriminate. But it didn't mean that people became less racist. It just meant that there were consequences to being racist. And so I don't think that consequences help move things forward a little bit, but that doesn't change people's hearts. It doesn't encourage them to find out more about their neighbor who is different than them. I think it got pushed a little bit underground, and then with like recent political things, it has been allowed to kind of like resurface. It never went away. It's just now, I think it's actually becoming more okay to speak in a way that was unacceptable even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Whether that was like PC language or not, I think that the niceness is going away again, which maybe that will help us get to a point where we can actually talk about stuff in a real way and change hearts and minds. But yeah, I don't think it's going away at all. I don't think it should be condoned if it's like affecting employee morale or like employee work ethic or like those kinds of things.
Okay. And have you ever been discriminated against?
Not in my memory. I can't think of a time, maybe like in passing, you know, like as a woman there are times where it's like an assumption is made about what do you know about this car, what do you know about this mechanical thing, but I wouldn't call that discrimination because those are usually in like social interactions and not, when I think of discrimination I usually think of it having a consequence in my job or like financially or like status, and I can't think of a time that that's happened.
Do you think the fact that you are a member of your particular ethnic group has any effect on your career choice in work experience?
100%. I started working at a horse farm when I was like 13. It was down the block. We moved to Grand Rapids. I loved horses, I loved animals, and I started working there. It was a white family, super easy, like you have a lot in common. Started working, lots of people who ride horses are white and female. I fit right in. So I didn't ever feel like an outlier. I didn't feel like I couldn't. I saw lots of people like me doing this thing that I loved. Makes it seem really possible. And then I went to Michigan State and I decided to be a zookeeper. And when you look at the demographics of that field, even 15 years ago, it's 80% white, 80% female. It's crazy. So like, I fit that. I can do this. When I interned, I was one of 3 white female interns at John Ball in Grand Rapids. Yeah, I think it was like when you see people like you doing the thing you like, it becomes much more reasonable to continue in it. Whereas if I was like the only white person in a field, then I would probably be like, how bad do I want it? Like, how bad do I really want this? Do I want to feel like an outlier all the time? Or do I want to move to something that makes me feel comfortable and like at home? Like, I have people who can relate to me in like most aspects of my life instead of like searching for those connections with people who have had a different upbringing than me. I would probably choose to be, Latina. I think that I recognize that I would not want to come back as a black female because of the racial makeup of America and the racial tone of America. I think that's probably one of the hardest demographics to be. And I would not want to be an Asian female, mainly because of the stereotypes I hold in my head about like what those pressures would have been in my life. Like, I think that a lot of Asian families put a lot of pressure on their children to succeed really hard, and I think I already do that to myself, and I wouldn't want to also have that. I never had that from my parents. It was just from myself. And I would never want to be in a situation where I felt like pushed to do that. Yeah, I think Latina, just because I think it's like a well-established ethnic group in America, and like they have like what I consider like a really cool culture, and like I don't know, and I speak Spanish a little bit, and I love that language, and to like have spoken it fluently in my home would have been like muy bueno.
Cool. Excellent question. That's all the questions I have for today. I appreciate you participating in this project with me. So that will do it. Carolyn mentioned in her school there was no black people there. I think she may have said that there may have been one, and there may have been some other minority groups, but it wasn't a large proportion of them. Predominantly, she went to white schools, and I think that relates to the book, because in the book, predominantly in America, there's more white people. And I know that has declined, but there's still, I believe, 62% more white people than there is any other group. And I think blacks account for a small percentage. Well, it's a lot more now, but it still accounts for a small percentage of that minority group. So that's what stands out the most to me, I think. From the interview, I think the main thing I learned was that Carolyn didn't experience really any discrimination. And I guess that stood out to me because in my own experience, I feel as if a lot of black people kind of expect to experience racism from the majority of white people. And I know I've experienced it. I don't think it's because there's levels, I would say, of racism. There's very aggressive racism, then there's more subtle. And I think that a lot of times I've experienced it, and I think that I also am racist in certain situations. I know that most of us don't mean to be, but it kind of just happens. Really, no, I can't say that it influences my expectations of her personal experience because we're just different. We're different people. We have different backgrounds. I grew up one way and I have my culture. She grew up her way and she has her culture. What I can say though is there are similarities in certain areas. Like we both grew up as Christians, so that's interesting. Like it helped me think of Christianity in a different way after having those conversations with her because it just adds more. Like it's interesting because you grew up one way and you are thinking, okay, this is the way that things are and this is the way that things are supposed to be because that's what we're socialized into. But when you hear a different perspective and if you're open-minded enough, then that could help to broaden just your way of thinking, and it could be beneficial, and I think for me it was. So yeah. And I think it was really cool to also learn that Carolyn's one of her heroes, because she's a zookeeper, it was Irwin. I may be pronouncing his name wrong, but I remember watching certain episodes of his show. He was always the guy that would travel around the world, going to different places and experiencing or just showing off different wildlife to the viewers. And he was very exciting. I thought he was cool. He had the accent. I want to say he was from Australia. I am not completely sure, so I don't know. But I thought it was cool to learn that he influenced her in that way. You know, it's almost as if she was saying that he kind of guided her to the journey of zoology. That she liked animals after that, or maybe she already liked animals, and he just helped to introduce that way of life to her, which I think is really cool. It makes me wonder what made me choose the field that I am currently pursuing in school right now. I feel like I'm pretty well. I feel like I've analyzed myself thoroughly just over the years, and I think as you get older, you're going to do that, especially if you're furthering yourself, you furthering your education, trying to find your place in life, trying to figure out who you want to be and what you want to do and all that stuff. And your best way just to live your life, I feel like you're going to analyze yourself thoroughly, and I think I've already done that. However, after this interview, I think I might have a broader curiosity when it comes to Caucasian people. I've been on Carolyn for about 4 years now, and I've learned a lot about Caucasian people through her, and just my own experiences outside of the relationship I have with Carolyn. Because I know a lot of Caucasian people, I work with a lot of Caucasian people, and I go to school, obviously, with a lot of Caucasian people, and I've built relationships, and I'm still learning. It's still a lot to learn. I want to say one of the things that I don't know.